Table Talk is not your typical D&D TTRPG podcast. We are not here to run you through our whole campaign.
We're here to talk about everything else in the space of tabletop roleplay.
I'm your host, Alejandra Wilhelm.
And I'm also your host, Mariah Gresham.
And we're your tabletop roleplay girlies. Alrighty, and we are live with another episode of Table Talk. Welcome back. It is me, Alejandra, one of your hosts.
And me, Mariah, your other host.
And thank you so much for joining us. And this episode, we actually wanted to kind of a little bit piggybacking off of our last episode. If you tuned in, we had one of our illustrious players on for a lovely little trial of her crimes and also the amazing experiences that we have because of her crimes. And there was a concept brought up that we've been mulling over as a little episode idea for a while, and it just kind of worked perfectly. But it's literally the concept of yes and no but.
Yes.
Yes and we, especially within the TTRPG community, and if you are newer to the TTRPG community, is typically just like the improv concept of, you know, whatever someone riffs off at the table. Doesn't matter if there's pre-existing context for it. You
keep building the story. Like, you keep things rolling. You don't like stop and be like, wait, explain this, or you try not to like stop and correct people or whatever. You just keep the train
running. Yeah. You know, whether it's between players or it's between players and GM.
Yeah.
It just kind of in a game where a lot of things are things you have to fucking adapt to in the moment.
Yeah.
It's a great tool to have and takes a lot of the thinking pressure off, where it's like whatever just came out of someone's mouth. Yes, that is true. And also this, and you just keep compounding.
Yeah, I think especially with things like related to, because definitely like I can see there being a comment where it's like, well, what if somebody says, I cast power word kill and we're level 4? And it's like, obviously that's not what we're talking about. Like, it's more about like thinking about it in the traditional like improv frame of like characterization. Like, if you say something about your character, like my character's feeling this in the moment, or my character perceives a situation as this or that or the other, it's not for anyone else to gainsay, right? Where you like take that information and then use it as you continue to act out the scenes. Like, it's specifically something that applies in like role play scenarios and applies a lot in like our games, which are very role play heavy.
Yeah. Especially like when you're running like a heavy rule of cool scenario.
Yes.
That's most of your bag.
Like, I do it so much in VTM. Like, we're playing VTM this weekend, and I was plotting with Oak, and there was like I fully made the joke of like, I'm newish to the mechanics. Like, I don't know all the nitty-gritty mechanics. My players don't know the mechanics at all. So I have just a large banner floating over my head that says I can do what I want. And no one questions me.
That's correct.
If it's cool and it works, I'm like, hey, we're gonna go with it.
Yeah. If the soul moves you, or even sometimes implementing stuff where, you know,
like homebrew rules,
yeah. Or if something funky is going on at the table, and it's like, well, if we're gonna like rules as written it, technically this wouldn't happen. However, I, as God, have dictated that I think that's a fucking rad idea, and we're going to run it anyway and see what happens.
Yes.
Very, very much that, which in large part, fully endorse. However, even as like me, myself being like pretty much a roleplay heavy rule of cool GM, there are moments.
There is a line, right? Where you have to.
There are moments where you fly too close to the sun. And you can start feeling it get a little hot.
Yeah, where the players are like, what if this wagon that we're on, what if we tear the wheels off and it's a plane now? And it's like, well, she ain't got no engine.
Yeah.
So she's not going to be able to take flight.
Correct. So like especially like in both of our specific scenarios where, you know, going into Strixhaven, I've been doing it now for almost 2 years, but in the very beginning, and even still relevant now because I'm still pretty new. And there's things that I'm encountering only as you guys are leveling up.
True, yeah.
Becoming stronger. That I just have a blanket rule where I'm like, for the most part, the things that y'all pitch me, I'm going to probably say yes to.
Yeah.
And regardless of whether I've researched it thoroughly or not, I don't care. We will roll with it. And then if something starts happening that I feel is a little bit broken,
Yeah.
or is really fucking with the game in general,
or just like way overpowered compared to what everyone else has.
Correct. I'll start maybe like, I reserve the right to dial back if need be
exactly.
on something that I've given approval on.
Yes.
But for me personally, and this is where the no but kind of plays in, is like, I don't want to fully take something away that I have granted, but maybe there's a way that we can relook at it and put some limitations.
Yeah.
That would make it a
there's
little
charges, there's an amount of time you can only do it once per long rest, or and I do the same thing with vampires. Like when like you and Bex were looking at lore sheets for things, and like Bex saw one and I can't remember which lore sheet it was, but it was something to the effect of like, oh, you have the ability to like go out in the sun and like use that like once per story, which the way we run games, like our games can take place in more than one night sometimes. Like I'm kind of loosey-goosey with that. So I'm like, basically I'll treat it like once per long rest, effectively, like once per day. It's like, but after you go take your little sunshine stroll, you go into a frenzy. And so Bex was like, oh, well, what if I just like had a cat there? And I'm like,
what if I locked myself in a barn with a goat?
And I'm
nearby?
like, yeah, that's too easy, right? Because it's like the highest level ability in a lore sheet. I'm like, I'm going to say you're going to eat the first humanoid you find.
Yeah. VTM,
if you're in a
grimdark
frenzy.
as it is, has to have realistic consequences.
So, like, if you want to take a person and chain them up in there with you to be your snack after you frenzy, great.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to have to do that, and then you're going to have to deal with how that clashes with your convictions and, like, take, the potential willpower damage and, like, all of that associated with that ability.
Yeah.
Because if you just are like, no, I have pocket rat and everything's fine, that's too easy.
I keep that thing on me.
Yeah. Now, sometimes pocket rat. Revna canonically has pocket rat.
Revna canonically has a pocket rat wherever she goes as an emergency snack.
Which I love. I love pocket. I think pocket rat is great. I'm excited to see pocket rat in action at some point in the game.
Specifically long for the scene of like my sire trying to like hand me a glass of blood, and I'm like, I would rather eat this cold dead rat than
congealed
fucking offer me.
I would rather chew this gummy rat
in front of you and the court and everybody, and then spit on your.
It's like, you know how like you eat bone marrow?
Yeah.
Where you have to sort of scrape it out. Or like, well, not when like people eat bone marrow, but like when you see a dog that has like a good bone marrow bone and they like prop it up and they take their little sharp teeth and they're like, I see like Revna doing that where you just like crack open a rat. And yes, I know rats don't traditionally crack open
a cold rat.
But where there's a will, there's a way. Yeah. You open a rat and you're just kind of like,
yeah. And then I want to just fucking spit the gore on his Valentino shoes.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
That's what I want. See, that's a yes answer.
One of the coterie goals now is just to like humiliate and cuck your sire.
Yeah.
And I approve of that.
Truly.
Like more than half of my NPCs also share that goal.
Truly, truly, truly. Yeah, no. It is a necessary strategy. I've also like realized that even in some of like the actual plays that I consume, I prefer, although I've always preferred like the more roleplay heavy stuff. Yeah, I do still need like it's a spectrum and you can definitely go too far to one end and the other.
Yeah.
And like, for example, like love Dimension 20. I'm a Dimension 20 hoe.
That's kind of the big, like the bastion.
Yeah. And like, I will say like with one of the newer seasons of like Never Stop Blowing Up, love what they've done with the mechanics and like a lot of other stuff within the game. But I will say like, this is probably the campaign that like Brennan Lee Mulligan has yes-anded so hard. The most I've ever seen in this particular campaign, because it does go a little cuckoo crazy. And like, there is an element, although like everyone is fabulous players, like I get a little bit lost in the plot of it, and it doesn't hook me as much as other ones do.
Because there is something right about like struggling against the restraints of a system.
Yeah.
That and like kind of wrestling with that gives you something. I actually have not seen, I'm very, very behind. No one yell at me, but I don't actually, I think I still need to watch the finale of like Fantasy High Junior Year. I'm really bad at finishing things if someone's not like watching it with me and pressuring me to finish it. Not because I don't want to finish the content, but sometimes I don't know. I hyperfixate on something else, or sometimes I'm like, I'm too anxious to consume new content, so I must watch something that I've watched 80 times before.
You got to go back to a comfort.
Yeah, and so I boot up like Howl's Moving Castle or Castlevania, and I'm like, cool, I can quote this, so it's fine. I'm just horrific at finishing content. But because I really want to watch the new seasons of like Misfits and Magic.
I've started out.
Because I've been seeing so much of it on TikTok, but I have not seen any of everything. Blow It All Up. Everything
Never stop blowing.
Never stop blowing.
Yeah.
It was something. I was like, you just said it. And I was like, it involves blowing things up.
Yeah. They like mechanically, they're doing so much like interesting stuff in that one.
I've seen clips and I was like, this looks kooky and crazy and fun.
It's super kooky crazy. And they're all having like a fucking blast about it. But it is one of those that like, because he is yes-anding quite literally everything that's happening at this table.
Yeah. Like if you present it, it's like, all right, sure enough.
Yeah. And then I'm like, it feels like if my attention diverts for even a moment, I'm like,
wait,
where are we? Happened? Why? Where are we? And I've completely lost like any semblance of the plot.
Yeah.
So it is one I have to like pay a lot more attention to because the yes ending can get kind of crazy. But it is a crazy world and setting that they're playing in. To the other like side of it and stuff, I will say like the current Misfits and Magic, with no spoilers or anything like that, but like Abria did not fucking come to play.
I love that like Abria had like A Court of Fae and Flowers, which was like a pretty fun chill time. Had some tension, but it was like, you know, D&D but Bridgerton. And then Abria came and did Burrow's End.
Yeah.
And if you've not seen Burrow's End, I think we posted a clip of me reacting to Burrow's End when they like the map
when the bear happens.
The Great Bear event happens, and then there's like an inside of bear, and it's like, wow, how many compartments of bear still remain explorable? And the answer is more than you thought or hoped for.
Yeah, Russian nesting doll of bear compartments.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, I feel it, I see that. And it seems like she's doing the same, like a similar thing with this Misfits and Magic, which I'm excited about because I still need to watch the Christmas special.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I watched that either. But I'm like, there was some hints of like darker stuff in the first, especially like Evan Kelp. Really just a name you have to chew. A name you have to chew through. A name with a texture, right? Like that, his stuff was like, I was like, that's very interesting. And like, there was some fun stuff at the end of the season where I was like, ooh, there's a lot more there that can be explored. So that's exciting that I've already spoiled things for myself because that's just how I roll.
Yeah. Well, it's also they've skipped to end of year, so they're like older and more mature.
Oh, so it's like the end of their school, basically.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
okay.
Like a bunch of stuff is going on, but like, you know, they're running like a modified
Kids on Bikes,
Kids on Brooms.
Kids
system.
on Brooms.
And they've adopted a little bit of some of the mechanics of Never Stop Blowing Up.
Interesting.
In that the dice can blow up and stuff.
Dice can explode in Kids on Bikes.
Yeah, but they don't permanently become the next one, which is...
Oh, that's what that is.
Yeah. So, like, if it has blown up, you now, like, have upgraded your dice for that skill.
Forever?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
So, eventually, you can build up to everything being 20.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And very... Okay, so Never Stop Blowing Up is its own system.
A little bit.
It's like an addition to...
Yeah, they've taken some stuff from previous stuff, from like Kids on Bikes and whatever, and they added like the exploding dice mechanic to it, as well as like some other things with like tokens and how do you expend resources, which they're also using a little bit of in this one.
Okay.
So yeah, it's very, very interesting.
That's fun to kind of see them moving toward like playing their own system.
But like they're still at the beginnings of it, so their dice are pretty small.
Right.
And then Abria will look at someone and be like, cool, give me a DC of 30.
Yeah. Because that was one of the scenes I saw where she's like, oh, yeah.
Does this sound fair to you? And you're like, sure. Yeah, let's go for it.
My lonely D6.
But like the consequence of not hitting that 30 is
bad.
Big and bad. And so like, and she's done it a couple times this like session, but it is it is being done in a way that it's like, it's humbling your players in a very good way of like, because there are times whenever like the hee-hees and the ha-has go a little far.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I said something as a joke, and your DM has to look you in the eye, and you're like, are you actually going to do
It's that
this?
moment of like, wait, do you really?
Yeah.
Because it's like, we're all bullshitting here. But it's like, if you really do it, then I
If you
have to
really
like.
do it, then like, I'm going to walk you through
Yeah.
what you've said with your own mouth and words you're going to do. And it's like, cool.
Then I get to do it.
The ramifications of that are like bad.
Yeah.
If it fails.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff. So there's been a couple of moments where it is like, the tone is ha ha hee hee. And then someone says something as a joke, and Abria just kind of does that little head tilt.
Mm-hmm.
And like Brennan mentioned it, is like, whenever you say something that you realize you're now playing within the realm of that DM's expertise.
Yeah.
And like, without spoilers, in this case, it was like a bodily injury or resetting a bone. And Abria, being an ex-athlete, was like, hey.
It's like, I know how that works. I know how hard that would be to do.
I know how hard that would be. I know what you're trying to do here. And you're trying to throw a little magic on it. And magic is currently a little bit volatile. So if it fucks up, could be real bad.
Yeah, you might just...
Could be really bad.
Delete some bone or something.
Correct.
Some wild shit.
So it is just a moment of like, we were all having a ha-ha fun joke. And then it's no longer a ha-ha fun joke. And then it ends on a really bad note.
You don't just wave your wand and like abracaband-aid and then it's fine.
The following check afterwards to deal with that situation is also a DC 30.
That's the one.
Yeah. And so you're like...
So like a Avada Kedavra
You're
one.
like, oh yeah, no. Like when I look at my GM and they give me an astronomical DC for something stupid I did, and I have to look at myself.
I'm excited for those moments in VTM too, where it's like I really... Because a lot of like the challenge ratings and stuff, I very much do on the fly. Where it's like, oh no, there are definitely things where it's like I've just thought through scenarios where like if somebody just decided to get a little spicy, and I was like, no,
that's the side of yes and. It's like we've yes anded into territory.
It's like heavy on the and, because the and is now it's going back to me, and now
my court.
Right.
And I can now volley that shit back at you at Mach 5.
Right. Yeah. Because it's like there's a lot of my NPCs for VTM especially are way overpowered just because they're old as hell. So it's like, I'm assuming you're not going to fight them. Right. Yeah. And it's like, I'm just like, hey, we're not math girlies here. Like I have an idea of like who you would fight. And I was like, and that'll be fine when it comes. But I'm like, there are some people that are on the board where it's like, I'm assuming that at least for a good long while, you're not gonna tussle with that person in a real and serious way.
I can't guarantee that for my girl.
I'm pretty good at anticipating like what things will make y'all react and like how you'll react. I can definitely see it down the line depending on like where I take things and how things evolve, because it's all very up in the air.
Like, what if I swing on a random man not knowing he's a fucking Methuselah? And then I find myself
shit happens
thrown into the fucking bay.
Shit happens. Should be like crazy how that comet's so close to the earth. It's just a blonde bitch flying her through downtown.
It's me, I'm the blonde bitch.
It's just a big blonde woman streaking across the sky.
Right.
Yeah, because like that's the fun thing where it's like it's not a thing where I'm like, I'll just kill. Like I'm not gonna kill your characters. There's no fun in that. But like thankfully, like Kindred are quite hard to kill. Mm-hmm. You're pretty damn hardy. Yeah. You can take some crazy amounts of injury and like with enough time and like checks and stuff, you can recover.
Take a little casket nap.
So yeah, exactly. But yeah, at some point I'm like, no, I definitely will have to know, like when things really start getting spicy, like what can everybody do? What's everybody's little, how did they spend their dots? Because I know how y'all spent yours. And they're for normal shit. Yeah. So like, how does everybody else spend their stuff?
How does everybody else take their little shopping day with their points?
Yeah. So I'm like, well. And to some extent, I will be nerfing some people's shit because it's just too broken.
Yeah. 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 Like, there is elements of now, especially like in our campaign, where now that we're starting to get into like where I want to implement a bit more combat, because obviously y'all are like starting to get to more significant levels where
We're
you
at 5th level.
Yeah, you
two,
wanna,
two attacks. Blippy.
so like you want to feel proficient. You want to
Yes.
see what your characters can do, and I want to give you opportunities to do that. And there's definitely like little moments when I'm like, I'm looking at Callista, because also Callista is my wild card because of the fact that like Bex made her with third party stuff. So
if anyone's gonna fuck us, it's gonna be Bex and Callista.
Fuck us, it's Callista, because she's got third party stuff. She's got magic tattoos that she can administer herself. She can steal my spells when I cast them. Basically, like she can roll to learn spells
like a certain amount of times.
Yeah, a certain amount of times per day. So then sometimes I forget about that mechanic, and then I cast something kind of beefy, and she's like, what level spell was that? Yeah. Granted, she can't, like,
she won't be able to cast it until for like ever.
At a level where she can cast it, but she knows it and it's now in her repertoire. So then I, like, that is an added level of stuff behind the screen where I have to think about the spells that some of these characters can cast.
Are using, And
I'm like, damn, do I want to risk Callista
knowing it,
nabbing that and stuff? Because it is interesting, it's new, it's different. And again, one of those things where I'm like, you know, I was down to clown. And we're starting to see the effects of it, of like, you know, when like in one of her first kind of battles with, she also has like a little hybrid level of warlock now. So one of her first battles with her warlock like familiar, she was like, oh, I have this ability as a tattooist. Can I give it to my familiar?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, sure. And then the combat happens, and I was like, that's a little beefy.
Yeah, you're like, maybe not.
That's kind of a beefy combo.
Yeah.
And stuff. But
or like maybe you can only do it for like one time. Like Valendra is like buku crazy.
Yeah. Where it's like it's a one
dagger thing. Exactly. You can do it, but it's like you can only pop it off one time.
Yeah. So it's a learning experience for sure. But it is also something that like I also don't want to discount my lack of experience as a DM with combat. So I'm like, for me, the first rationalization of that is like, I want to stay on the yes and as much as possible. And the no but will happen whenever I seem to like have run out of options for dealing with the situation.
Yeah. And it's like, we're both fortunate to have like people that are, we know people that are very good with mechanics and very good with story and stuff. So it's like, even when we feel like we're a little bit out of our depth, like we can go to our friends that like someone probably has an idea of how to fix it or how to like balance it or what could happen as a repercussion of this thing. And then if not, then you can say like, okay, we modify. Like I think the worst case is you have to go back to someone and say like, okay, I need to like slightly modify this thing I gave you.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's like there are other things like where like the observant feat is always like an easy one to pick on, right? At least where like DMs will get mad because it allows you to read lips. And so it's like you can read lips. All it's just if my eyes are open, I'm reading them lips.
If I can peep it,
I can know it. Right. And so it's like that, like DMs will forget about that and then they'll get really irritated when players bring up and it's like, well, no. It's like, first of all, like in that scenario, if those people have no reason to guess that person might have the observant feat, there's no reason they would disguise their conversation.
Correct.
Or if it was really that private of a conversation, you need to step behind a bush or like whatever you got to do to block line of sight. But it's like there's like things like that where you never want to feel like, oh, like you're punishing it with like creative uses of abilities.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, because that's just cool. And that means like your player's invested and they like what they're doing. And I don't know, I think it's hard for something to like truly, truly break the game.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of avenues to play around in as the GM. Because for me, yeah, exactly like you said, like I don't want to punish the innovation of being like, hey, I have this thing. Can I use it this way?
Yeah.
And in a way that like, if I didn't factor that in as
like good on you for
that's on fucking me.
Yeah, anticipating something that I didn't.
And like there should be reward for that in the same instance as like if a player gets a fucking nat 20, then it's like, cool, yeah, you're let me hand you my fucking laptop because you get
Yeah.
all the information. And like, that is just part of the game. And like, nothing's ever truly going to be super, super game breaking. I think like your job as a GM is to find ways through it, facilitate and work around it if possible. But yeah, like in the instance of the observant fee, it's like, okay, then moving forward, it can't just be all the important conversations are had behind closed doors.
Yeah, you have to edit where people are talking or like come up with different ways for them to communicate, like sending stones or writing letters, or like there's different, or like using, because even if like they can read lips, like are they speaking a language the character knows?
Yeah.
Right? Because like if the character doesn't know the language, then like you're reading a language you don't know, right? And like there are ways around it that I think like just make you as the DM like view your world from like step back and just view your world from a little like a different perspective.
Yeah. Or like, for example, like the mechanic of Callista learning a spell if it's cast around her.
Yeah.
My condition for her as the player is like, you have to remember to call that shit out in the moment.
Yes. You can't retroactively be like,
you can't 3 hours down the line be like, hey, you remember that one time that this dude cast this one spell? Can I get it?
No, I do not. We play for 10 hours.
No.
I don't remember
that.
Like,
you got to call your shot in the moment. Because also she has a limited amount of those.
Yeah, I think she can only do it like
3 times a day.
3 times a day or something.
So I'm like,
that.
You do need to call that shot in the moment. And if the scene passes, then that's a spell you will not know.
Yeah.
Because it's also like in the writing of the skill, like she has to take a moment to like jot it down, basically.
Yeah. So it's like, or if you were doing, if it's like a combat.
And learn it.
Yeah. If we're in combat and you're doing something else, you can't roll. If you roll to try to learn a spell, then like that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're not attacking or working on a puzzle or like whatever else.
Yeah. Or if you're going to roll,
doing.
you roll at disadvantage because you're also fighting.
Yeah.
Something. So like you can add stipulations here and there to not fully take away something, but mitigate it so that it feels a bit more fair, a bit more balanced. And it's not always finding you on the back foot kind of thing. But you're also not just like taking something away because your player can do a cool thing. Like Callista also has a lot of like resistances and stuff because of the fact that she's like a homebrew race and all this other stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So I can't just go, cool, you have a resistance to a bunch of types of damage, so I'm only going to throw mind flayers at y'all. Like, no.
No, but there are other things that do psychic damage.
For sure. But it can't be like moving forward.
Oops, all mind flayers.
Oops, all mind flayers.
Yeah,
because I don't want to deal with your resistances.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because, like, yeah, she has a lot of resistances, but she also doesn't have the most HP.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a lot of...
It's like she has an icon, but she doesn't, like, wear heavy armor. You know, like, there are other things, right, where...
that balance it out.
You can... Exactly.
Yeah, it's been a fun experience to learn through and have those kinds of, like, decisions and encounters. And, yeah, like we mentioned in the last episode, where, like, this kind of got brought up, where it was, like, Callista has had a couple instances where there were some moments where I was like, this could be not game breaking, but we are certainly taking the campaign in a whole new direction.
Yeah, for sure.
And having the sit down chat with her and being like, hey, listen, and having to humble myself as a GM, because like obviously the instinct is there to sometimes when things do get a little out of hand and you start feeling like the complete loss of control.
Yeah. It's like you can be sandbox, but it's like sometimes it's like the sandbox is next to a really tall cliff.
Still in a box.
Yeah, and then like that box is next to a really tall cliff, and the players are like, "Fuck this box! I'm gonna run toward the cliff," and you're like, "Please don't!" And you just want to like kind of grab them by the head and drop them back in.
So there is an instinct that is there, I think, and some people give into it more than others, of wanting to put the guardrails back on.
Yeah, to be like, wait, no, you're not doing that. Just like like letting the panic in the moment.
But but you also have to kind of keep perspective of like, you know, my players don't know the information I do
right
behind the screen.
Yeah.
So if you put the guardrails back on without explanation and just a no, and there is no but,
it just seems like you're limiting them.
It seems like you're limiting them.
And being controlling,
autonomy. The collaborative element of the story can start to kind of fade away, and people can start not having fun. And I knew that like when I had that instinct initially, and that wasn't like during our session, it was like in the post
It was when we were like, it's like we were thinking it over and like you and I were talking it over. And it's like, no, that'd be kind of wild, huh?
Kind of wild and bad. And so I had to like sit it with myself for a minute and be like, okay. And I've also been in the position as a player before where I've wanted to do something and it's been completely shut down by a GM with no explanation.
Exactly.
And so I was like, I don't want to be that person. And so because it was a new situation I'd never encountered, I was like, let me just sit down with her and talk her through it. And not in a necessarily like spoilery way, but just to be like, hey, here are the things that I think your character would know natural consequences to the thing that she wants to do.
Yep.
Me to you as the player is, you can do this, but I'm letting you know right now, if we start embarking on this course, we will find ourselves in an entirely different campaign.
Yes.
And that is fine. I'm willing to facilitate that.
Yes.
But it is also like, I just didn't want the situation to happen where it's like everyone sat down with me on session 0 was like, we want to do a Strixhaven.
Yeah, we want to go to school. And then like 2 sessions from now, we're like, why are we on the lam?
Correct. And so I was like, I just need you to be aware of that going forward. So if we do it, then everybody knew what the situation was going in and nobody can look at me and be like, hey, what the fuck?
And I think it's also like understanding that like your players are smart people and like they can separate what they as humans know and what their characters know.
Ideally.
Right. Now it's like that can be tricky. And I think like we've had moments where like we've had little discussions where it's like, all right, quick powwow on like, what do we know as humans who just have talked about our characters to each other a lot and like their inner feelings? And then what do we know as these characters?
Yeah.
Which is much, much less.
Just kind of regaining the focus a little bit.
Because, like, we have that a lot with, like, VTM, too, where it's, like, I've said things about the world that, like, y'all's characters have no idea.
Yeah.
Are about, and I'm, like, just because I get too excited, and I'm, like, I need to fucking share information. Or, like, on a much, much smaller scale, kind of similar to that example when the last time I played VTM, when Revna fully insanguinated that, like, one Inquisition soldier, and it's like, hey, this dry man, I'm gonna leave him in this warehouse, and I'm a run on, which made I love that because it worked out. It made a ton of sense. Like, it made sense that you all made that choice. That was what made sense for Revna to do. I was just like, there's fire here. That man's dead. He's not gonna attack anyone else. I'm a dip.
Yeah.
Now, that's a dry boy, and there's a bunch of Inquisition soldiers that are hunting vampires that are going to find that very dry man with no liquid in his body.
Maybe he was just a dehydrated man.
You know?
He just didn't, maybe he's like me, and he only subsists on 1 glass of water for every.
You know, I know you've woken up in the night, and your body's forced you to drink water, but I think if I cut you, even in that moment, you would still bleed. And when I say he's a dry boy, I mean, humans are more liquid than not liquid. And that man was liquidless. There was all absence of fluid. An IV bag would not save him. And then, like, y'all got back where you were reporters, like, so how'd the mission go? You know, to, like, the Seneschal. And I had a little moment where I'm like, hi, hello, me as the hand of God. I would like to remind everyone that lying is a thing you can do in the game.
Like, shit, you're right.
I'm like, I'm not telling you whether you should lie or whether you should be truthful. I'm just saying that you have free will and options.
Yeah. And
so if you want to consider things and look at your character sheet and make a choice.
Yeah. I remember you saying that. And I was like, oh shit, you're right. I could just lie. And I look at my fucking non-charisma ass character, which I don't typically play.
You don't.
On charisma based.
You don't. Yeah.
So I was like, shit.
You're like, I have 2 dice.
I have 2 dice. And I just look at you.
Like, I have $2.
I got $2.
And I'm like, I know you have $2.
And a stale potato chip.
I know you have $2, a stale potato chip, and a piece of and a dry man back at that warehouse. That's now in Inquisition custody. But I'm gonna need you to pull something out.
Does this work for you?
And then,
as I'm trying to lie to a much older, much wiser vampire.
Yeah, and then I astonishingly, like, Nox also lied well, I think, and then I astonishingly rolled awfully, and I'm like, listen, being an overworked Seneschal with, like, way too much shit to do has its downsides, and he just wants you to get the fuck out of his office.
This is supposed to be routine.
Yeah,
you know?
it was. And he's like, this is a thing I need to check off my to-do list so I can get back and have some peace and fucking quiet in my office. And he wants you to leave and just drop off the shit you came with. And that worked. Now, I made a little note about, I was like, that certainly won't ever come back to haunt anyone. No one will remember that man. Ever. That'll be fine.
Doesn't have loved ones or anything.
No. No one that'll
A
miss.
man in this economy?
Hey, listen. You know what? Fair enough.
Oh, no. No, yeah.
But there was just that little, especially like I have that a lot with BTM because it's a system we're all new to, even me, like running it, because running it is so much more involved, right, than just like watching something or consuming content about it. Where it's like I have plenty of moments where I'm like, hey, you would know this about Vampire Society. You would know this about this. Because if I don't do that, then one of like y'all aren't making... I want y'all to have as much information as you can about the world and about the characters and be able to make the most informed choices you can without dumping like a textbook worth of shit on you and being like, hi, can you review this before we... Because that's not realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also like a game where we are playing not what we're supposed to be playing.
No, because I did the thing where I was like, I want y'all to be able to do cool shit with your characters. And I knew a lot of my NPCs were going to be elders. And so I was like, well, if they're fledglings, right, which is usually what people suggest, like what the book suggests you start as, which makes sense, obviously, because there's just less things to manage. I was like, well, that's not really going to make sense. I'm just like, hey, I've been a vampire for 2 months and I'm coming in to get to work with all these like old yeah, it's like, why? Like, how did you get there? And so like
Nepotism.
Basic, which is basically still what it is, right? Because comparatively, y'all are still young, but like, it's funny the way the character creation has come together because there are justifications for like each of you not knowing much at all about how society works and being sheltered in your own ways, which is still very fun and funny. And I'm glad that's worked out. But I've also given y'all much more powerful characters than new players really should have, or that I should have to contend with as a newish DM. So then by proxy, my NPCs are higher, and yeah. So it's like I did that to myself, and I don't regret it because I thought this through a lot before we started the game, and I still think it makes sense. And I still like y'all being able to do cool shit with your characters and like have some XP to spend. But I did make my life, especially,
I made this bed
a little harder than it maybe had to be.
Yeah, but I do think it lends itself a lot to, just like you said, where it is a new system, you're a new storyteller, and then like it's a brand new fucking system for us. And although like we can swing our weight in as far as TTRPGs go, so there was a little element of like, we were fine with creating beefier characters and having the understanding of that. And being like, you helping facilitate a lot of like the character creation process of that has been super helpful. On top of, exactly like you said, like we kind of naturally threw ourselves in a way where it was like, I have justifications for why she is big and beefy. Yeah. And I also know that I am new to the system and I need a justification for why she's dumb.
Yes.
About
exactly.
some of the stuff that's going to happen and why she might not be as experienced.
Which is kind of a slapstick comedy combo.
Yeah.
Where it's like, they've been alive. They just have been taking a long nap, or they've been really sheltered because they're Nepo babies, or like they're kind of new, like Bex's new character, and through unfortunate events have ended up where they are. And so like it's really interesting to see like how this is played out. And I think it'll totally be fine as like we're playing more. Like once we fully hit our stride with it, it'll be it's going to be fine. If anything, I think I probably just am too lenient with like challenge ratings and like difficulty levels on stuff, if anything.
I mean, that's why you'll get that as it comes and whatever. Like, I still don't know how to balance encounters.
Yeah.
I saw a TikTok today that was like, yeah, we done been knowing how to DM. And it's like, all right, well, build a fucking encounter. And it's like, huh? And
thank
the
you.
sticky note just says more beholders and then backspace and says no beholders, question mark. And I'm
More
like, that's exactly
eyes.
how I feel.
Truly, yeah.
When I'm building out encounters for y'all, and I'm just like, I don't fucking know.
I tried to make a dungeon one time because I was like, I'm gonna make a dungeon. Because I bought like Ghost of the Salt Marsh, and it was back when like we were in our old like Ravenloft group, and I was gonna run it. And my hyperfixating ass, like I got stuck on, there was like a website where you could like build out your dungeon. That killed me. I died right there at that level. Because I was like, wait, do I want them to turn left or right? And it's like the analysis paralysis was just, it killed its stone dead of like, do I want moss growing on this wall or mushrooms? And I'm like, yeah. Like, where do I want the creatures to be? I'm like, I don't fucking know.
Like, to be honest, the last encounter that we had, I had some bigger bullet points of, and then other stuff I kind of just made up on the spot.
Which I feel like is the way to go with
Yeah.
it, honestly.
Where I was like, I knew there was puzzles. I didn't exactly know what the puzzles were until y'all were like in the rooms investigating. And I was like, yeah, there's like a statue and this thing and the whatever. And then y'all go investigate. And I'm like, yeah, there would be a thing about this and da-da-da-da. Or like, that was fully like starting to make up just on the fly.
Nice.
And like, according to your rules.
Yeah, we
and,
didn't
like,
know that.
As you did well, I was like, okay, what would
the solution
what would be the solution for this puzzle? And I was like, well, yeah, like, no, I mentioned this earlier, like that response to this, and now you're good. And
we didn't know that, and it felt great. Yeah.
Yeah, because it wasn't meant to be like the encounter I actually had built out and stuff.
No, yeah.
But yeah, and so like there's no shame in just kind of winging it.
Exactly. Yeah, and like
I knew the like the things that y'all might potentially fight in there and the conditions of activating those things.
Yeah, which we really did
skirt by the skin of your fucking teeth.
I was sick, so I missed the first half of that like dungeon exam. But apparently Anya rolled well for you when you were rolling for her. Of like, that was Anya's day as a rogue. I have to question whether I need to take like a couple levels of rogue for Anya now. And then I rolled like 2 nat 20s with, it's the one set of dice that whether they're rolling high or low, I only roll them for Anya. And I rolled 2 nat 20s to like solve the puzzle and like figure out how to deactivate it so we can move around safely to get to like the thing we actually needed. And I was like, wow, that really, there were a lot of moments where that could have gone haywire. Yeah. And it just didn't.
Yeah.
And we just kind of got to like do our thing and leave.
And there was also just like, that was one of those moments where like the yes ending truly saved me in regards to like the fucking puzzles.
Yeah.
And stuff. Because I was just bullshitting that.
Which is kind of good though, right? Because if you had spent like a ton of time, which like
a specific way this puzzle has
to be done. And then if we're just like
fucking it up and you're just stuck.
We're just poking a door with our swords for 20 minutes where it's like, please. Which like there is like, if you enjoy coming up with, just really advanced puzzles, go for it. Like follow your truth. But there is something to like, I didn't know that you improv that puzzle.
I kind of saw a little bit of that. I believe it was like Ryan and Mel.
His stuff's great.
His stuff is amazing as far as like tips on like both miniatures, encounters, general like session running stuff. Incredible.
He was part of the great run of Ryans that we had.
Collection of Ryans that
3 white men named Ryan.
The early dawn. But he's an incredible creator, very useful content. And I think he made one of the videos that was like regarding puzzles. And he like the clickbaity like intro is like, I never like planned the solution for my puzzle.
Hell yeah.
So I present the puzzle, and then when the players arrive at a solution
that
makes sense, then run with it. So I was like, yeah, that there's a puzzle. I don't really know what the puzzle is.
I like that. I like that a lot.
And then whenever y'all had a point where like the rolls or the solution felt good,
then
I was like, yeah, you solved it.
Because it's like at the point of like if your players are just like whiffing the rolls over and over again, then you also have time behind the screen to be like, damn, well, I guess I better figure something out of like what happens. Or it's like you're going to get into combat, or you're like, I guess I have some time to like figure out what the solution to this thing is.
As opposed to handing your players like a 3rd grader riddle and then watching them struggle.
It's like, do you ever have to do the assessments for like the gifted and talented program?
No, baby, that's you.
I did. Anyone listening that had to do that? I've been seeing weird TikToks about that where it's like, were we in a weird government program? Because we didn't do this in my school, but some people apparently like got on a bus and went to a secondary location and like made stuff for the day. And I'm like, first of all, y'all didn't have helicopter parents like I had a helicopter parent because I don't know. I just feel like my mother would have sensed that intuitively and just careened through the field at the school. Like, where are you taking my child? But yeah, there was just such like weird, like the Tesseract block things where I was like, just so many strange formative experiences around that. But yeah, it feels a bit like that, where it's like, what, I forgot where I was going with that. Like, yeah, like what the hell is even happening with this?
Yeah, about like creating puzzles ahead of time and like encountering the block of like if they're not solving it the specific way that you intended.
Yeah, which that's a good thing. Because I remember like when we had talked to like Andy, who wrote the Lorlock Manor mystery too, of like one thing, like a big point they made in their episode, which I loved, was like, okay, you have to have like different ways that your players can arrive at a solution. And like that's a really good rule to have so you don't back yourself into a corner as a DM. Like you have to have like backup reveal options where it's like, yeah, maybe you have a favorite where you're like, wow, I hope they get this. But if they don't, because they probably aren't, because if it's a thing you're like, oh, I wish upon a star that they'll roll high enough, it's going to be all twos, baby. Like, they're not going to get it. It'll be the random way that they're like, I stumble and fall into the desk and it sticks to my hand or something stupid like that is how they find it. Like, that point that you have to build yourself kind of multiple inroads and outroads. I'm like, that's a good idea to have too, because that lets you kind of relax. If you aren't someone who's comfortable just sort of pantsing your way through it, then you've got to have your little Rolodex of solutions. I feel like
for me so far the biggest thing I've gathered from the experience of like the improvisational nature of this game is that the more and more that I have let go of the control, the better.
Same.
And like have faith in your players that they will find a way. And you just need to be ready and able to react to it when it happens and stuff. Because like, I know when I first designed your like dungeon for your character, I felt stressed over that bitch the whole time. Because I was like, is it balanced? Is there enough? Is there this? Are there things that are hidden that are going to be easily found or not at all? I was pouring over that bitch.
Yeah.
And for this little fucking ruin exam, I was like, fuck it.
Hey. And it was fun.
I was like, y'all go in. This is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And we'll figure it
out. And it's like,
we're going.
But you have more fun doing that because you haven't spent, not like you didn't have fun planning my arc, but like you got to skip the bit where you were spending all that time stressing over it.
And like, there's still like things that I will, regardless, like pour a bit more effort and intention, especially when it's regarding like your character's story.
Yeah.
But my energy is much better served there.
Yeah. Like that cursed trip to Michael's we had where I was trying, Ollie and I made a trip to Michael's. She's like, I need to get something for like Bex's arc finale. And I'm like, sick. I'm a craft bitch from birth. Let us go. And like there was a point where like you were trying, like I was trying to grasp what you were trying to make. Because you're like, I need foam. And I was like, okay, well, there's many a type of foam.
Many foam.
I'm like, do you need fluorofoam? Do you need, like, when you say foam, what, like foam that can be wet? Foam that, like, what shape of foam? And like, for like, there was a moment where you're like, I can't answer because it'll give things away. And I'm like, I do need basic information about the thing.
Foam.
And you're like, I need it to be flat. I'm like, okay. And I was like, are you, because I knew you had ordered like the mat. So I was like, are you not? I was like, are you making like a terrain map? You're like, no, I have the map. And I was like, is it gonna go, are you gonna paint it to go and then go over the map? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, great. Then just normal foam. And you're like, well, what if I need it to like raise up? And I was like, raise up horizontally, vertically, like, and move in what way? You're like, maybe yes. Like, all right, I'm gonna not react to that. And it's like we were just going around Michael's.
Yeah.
Here's how we figure out. Why is the floor diagonal now and 20 feet in the air?
Those like little kickstands that Brennan Lee Mulligan always uses.
Did you find them?
Yeah, I have them in my cart whenever I'm able to. But I love it because like the more we've gone, the more I can like upgrade a little bit of like the showmanship of what we're doing. And that's very satisfying to me. We just got to the point where we have a little television and we're going to be using it for maps.
Yeah.
And I have a bunch of maps that we can use. But there will be like some minis as well. And I'm frothing at the mouth now.
We still need to have like a mini painting party where we paint all the bibas.
We do. There may come a point where I just give y'all a bunch of like terrain pieces that I'm just going to be like, don't look at them too long, but paint them.
If you ever just need to bring some over and I'll help you paint them,
because they won't really spoil anything. They're just like fancy royal decor shit.
Yeah, just tell me what colors you want people to wear.
Yeah.
They're not like Hero Forge minis where it's like, oh, their name's on the bottom. Like, no.
But yeah, no. It's been a fucking time, but it's definitely a learning experience. And yeah, it looks like we are coming up on time, but I hope this helped. I hope some good info, or if nothing else, enjoyed us.
We're entertained.
Rambling.
Well, you know it's entertained.
And we will see y'all next time.
Bye.
Table Talk is a podcast brought to you by Mythos Media Productions, bringing you a new episode every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at Table Talk RPG, or check us out at our website, mythosmediaproductions.godaddyscites.com. All business inquiries can reach out to us via email at info@mythosmediaproductions.com.